The night I got kicked out of my own family, I wasn't at a funeral or a wedding. I was standing in my kitchen in Charlotte, phone in hand, watching messages flood into the Mitchell family updates group chat faster than I could read them. My name is Jessica Martinez, and the message that changed everything came from my mother-in-law at exactly 9:37 p.m. on a Tuesday. Stay away from us forever. You are not welcome in this family. The words glowed on my screen like a curse I couldn't unsend, couldn't unsee, couldn't unhear. What made it worse wasn't just that she wrote it. It was that nobody in that chat, not one single person, not even my husband, said a word to stop her. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. 43 people saw that message. 43 people who had smiled at our engagement party, who had toasted our future, who had promised to love and support us. And in that moment, their silence spoke louder than any cruelty Patricia Mitchell could type. I stood there in the glow of my phone screen, rain starting to tap against the window, and I realized something that should have been obvious months ago. I had married into a family that saw me as an audition, not a daughter, and I had just failed my final performance. The morning started like any other Wednesday in late September. Charlotte humidity clung to everything, making the air feel thick enough to drink. I woke up in our Noda loft apartment, the one David and I had moved into 6 months after the wedding, with exposed brick walls and windows that let in too much light too early. The kind of place that looked like freedom in the rental photos but felt more like a holding pattern once you lived in it. David was already gone. He left for work before sunrise most days, something about fewer distractions at the office, fewer meetings, fewer people. I used to think it was dedication. Now I wondered if it was just avoidance. The coffee maker gurgled in the kitchen, the smell mixing with the faint scent of the lavender plant I kept by the window, the one that was slowly dying despite my best efforts. I poured a cup and opened my phone out of habit, that mindless morning scroll we all do before our brains fully wake up. That was when I saw it. The family group chat had exploded overnight. 47 new messages. My stomach dropped before I even read the first one. Nothing good ever came from that many notifications from the Mitchell family updates chat. I scrolled up to find where it started, and there it was. Patricia Mitchell had sent a photo at 11 p.m. the night before. It was a screenshot of a text conversation, but the names were blurred out just enough to create mystery while making the content crystal clear. The messages talked about someone being a gold digger, someone marrying for money and status, someone who didn't belong. And in her caption above the screenshot, Patricia had written, "When people show you who they really are, believe them. Protect your family at all costs." My hands started shaking before my brain caught up to what I was seeing. I scrolled down through the responses. David's sister Emily had sent a shocked face emoji. His cousin Jennifer wrote, "Oh no, that's terrible." His Aunt Susan replied, "We have to be careful who we let into our inner circle." Message after message of vague support, of righteous agreement, of circling the wagons. And then 20 messages down, Patricia sent the follow-up that made everything clear. "I will not name names, but some people have made it clear they are only here for what they can take from this family. Stay away from us forever. You are not welcome in this family." Effective immediately, certain individuals are no longer invited to family functions. We will not be acknowledging or responding to attempts at contact. This family protects its own. I read it 3 times before the words actually penetrated. She was talking about me. She had to be talking about me. There was nobody else it could be. David's brother was married to someone Patricia adored. His sister was single. Every cousin, every aunt, every uncle had been part of this family for decades. I was the only new addition, the only outsider, the only one who didn't fit the mold of what a Mitchell was supposed to be. And she had just excommunicated me in front of everyone we knew, without using my name, without giving me a chance to defend myself, without even having the courage to say it to my face. The rain outside picked up, drumming against the window like it was trying to get my attention. I set the coffee cup down because my hands were shaking too hard to hold it. 43 people had seen those messages. 43 people who knew exactly who she meant. And not one of them had said, "Wait, hold on," or "This isn't right," or "Maybe we should talk about this privately." The silence in that chat thread was deafening. I called David. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. I hung up and called again. This time he answered on the second ring, his voice distracted, The sound of keyboard clicking in the background. Hey babe, kind of in the middle of something, can I call you back? His mother just kicked me out of your family in the group chat. The keyboard clicking stopped. There was a long pause, the kind that stretches until you can hear your own heartbeat in it. What are you talking about? Go read the Mitchell family updates chat. Right now. I heard him breathing, heard the faint sound of him putting me on speaker, heard the quiet swipe and tap of him opening his phone. The silence stretched longer. Then he said, in a voice that sounded like he was trying to calm down a spooked animal, "Okay, I see it. Let me call her." "Don't call her, David. Talk to me. What is happening?" "I don't know. I need to figure out what this is about." "You need to figure out what it's about?" "She just told everyone in your family to stay away from me. She called me a gold digger without using my name. And you need to figure out what it's about?" He exhaled long and slow. Just give me an hour. Let me handle this." I hung up. Not out of anger, though that was there. I hung up because I suddenly understood something I had been refusing to see for months. David was never going to choose me over them. He was going to manage me, mediate me, handle me. But he was never going to stand in front of me and say, "This stops now." I sat on the edge of our bed, still unmade from the night before, and stared at the exposed brick wall that had seemed so charming when we moved in. The rain was coming down harder now, sheets of it blurring the window until the whole world outside looked like watercolor running down a canvas. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus, my older brother. "Just saw the group chat. What the hell is going on? Are you okay?" I didn't know how to answer that. Was I okay? I was married to a man whose mother had just publicly disowned me. I was part of a family that had just collectively shrugged at my humiliation. I was standing in an apartment that suddenly felt like it belonged to someone else's life. "No," I typed back. "But I will be." The rest of that morning moved like I was underwater. I got dressed for work on autopilot, pulling on scrubs that smelled like hospital detergent, and sliding my feet into the sneakers I wore for 12-hour shifts at the Carolina Children's Therapy Center. I worked with kids recovering from injuries, from surgeries, from conditions that made their small bodies work harder than any child should have to work. It was the kind of job that reminded you every single day what real problems looked like. And yet, standing in my kitchen with my work bag over my shoulder, I felt like my entire world was caving in over a group chat message. The rain had slowed to a drizzle by the time I got in my car. Charlotte traffic was its usual mess, brake lights stretching down Independence Boulevard like a river of red. I sat at a stoplight and watched people in the cars around me, all of them living their own private dramas, carrying their own weight. The woman in the SUV next to me was crying. The man in the truck ahead was singing, his head bobbing to music I couldn't hear. We were all just trying to make it through the day without breaking. The light turned green and I drove. Work was a blessing that day because it didn't give me time to think. My first patient was a 7-year-old named Connor, who was relearning how to walk after a car accident. His smile was missing 2 front teeth and his determination could power a small city. We worked on balance exercises, on building strength in his left leg, on small victories that would add up to big ones eventually. He told me about his dog, about his favorite video game, about how he was going to be a superhero when he grew up. And for an hour I forgot about Patricia Mitchell and her group chat exile. I forgot about David's silence. I forgot about being unwelcome. Between patients I checked my phone. David had texted, "Talk to Mom. She's upset about something she heard. I'm trying to get to the bottom of it. Can we talk tonight?" I stared at that message until the words stopped making sense. She's upset. As if Patricia was the victim here. As if she had been wronged. As if her feelings were the ones that mattered. I didn't respond. My mentor, Dr. Helen Park, found me in the break room during lunch. She was the kind of woman who noticed everything and said very little until it mattered. She sat down across from me with her sad desk salad and her green tea and waited. I lasted maybe 30 seconds before I told her everything. Helen listened without interrupting. Her face calm in that way that made you feel like whatever you were saying wasn't crazy. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. When I finished, she took a sip of her tea and said, "What do you think this is really about?" "I don't know. Money? Status? The fact that I'm not from their world?" Helen shook her head slowly. "Control. People who need control don't care about money or status. They care about who gets to make the decisions. And right now, she's decided you're a threat to her control over her son. So what do I do? Helen smiled, but it was sad around the edges. You decide if you're willing to spend your life asking permission to exist. That sentence followed me through the rest of my shift, through the drive home in rush hour traffic, through the elevator ride up to our loft. David was already home when I walked in, sitting on the couch with his laptop closed, hands folded in his lap like he was waiting for a doctor to deliver bad news. We need to talk, he said. I set my bag down by the door. Yeah, we do. He patted the couch next to him, but I stayed standing. My mother is upset because someone told her you said some things about our family. What things? That we only care about appearances. That you feel like you're being judged all the time. That you don't feel welcome. I stared at him. I did say those things, David. To my therapist. In a private session. How does your mother know about my therapy? He looked away, out the window at the Charlotte skyline starting to glow with evening lights. Emily was worried about you. She mentioned it to Mom. And Mom asked around. The floor felt like it dropped out from under me. Asked around. Your mother investigated my therapy sessions? David stood up, hands out like he was approaching something dangerous. She was just concerned. She wants to make sure you're okay, that we're okay. By posting about me in a family group chat? By telling everyone to stay away from me? He ran a hand through his hair, frustration creeping into his voice. She didn't use your name. Everyone knew it was me. Nobody knows that for sure. David, 43 people saw that message. How many of them have texted me today to check if I'm okay? He didn't answer because we both knew the answer was 0. How many of them defended me in the chat? Again, silence. How many of them said, hey Patricia, this isn't okay. Maybe we should handle this privately. He sat back down, elbows on his knees, head in his hands. What do you want me to do, Jess? I want you to tell your mother that what she did was wrong. I want you to stand up in that group chat and say that I'm your wife and I deserve respect. I want you to choose me. He looked up at me, and in his eyes I saw something that broke my heart more than Patricia's message ever could. I saw fear. He was afraid of his mother. Afraid of disappointing her. Afraid of being the one who disrupted the perfect Mitchell family image. And in that moment I knew. He was never going to choose me. Not really. Not when it counted. The rain started again, harder this time, and somewhere in the building someone was playing piano. The notes drifting through the walls like a soundtrack to everything falling apart. I'll talk to her, David finally said. I'll smooth this over. I don't want you to smooth it over. I want you to fix it. He stood again, reaching for me, but I stepped back. There's a difference, David. Smoothing it over means making everyone comfortable again. Fixing it means drawing a line and saying this behavior isn't acceptable. Which one are you going to do? He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. I just need some time to figure out the right approach. I nodded slowly. Okay, you figure out your approach. I'm going to figure out mine. That night I lay awake while David slept next to me. His breathing even and undisturbed. The rain hammered against the windows, relentless. And I stared at the ceiling thinking about how you can share a bed with someone and still feel completely alone. My phone sat on the nightstand, dark and silent. No apology from Patricia. No messages of support from anyone in that family. Just the group chat, still active, now discussing someone's birthday party and whether they should do brunch or dinner. Like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't just been erased. Around 2 in the morning, my phone lit up with a new notification. Not from the Mitchell family chat. From a number I didn't recognize. The message was short. This is Robert Mitchell. I'm sorry about what happened. Patricia is wrong. But she won't change her mind. Be careful. I stared at that message for a long time. David's father, reaching out in secret, offering sympathy but no solution. Another Mitchell man who saw the problem but wouldn't fight it. I turned off my phone and closed my eyes, but sleep didn't come. Instead, I lay there listening to the rain and thinking about my father, who died when I was 19. He was a construction worker who came to this country with nothing and built a life through sheer determination. He used to tell me, Mija, never let anyone make you small. You are not here to fit into someone else's boxes. You are here to build your own house. I had forgotten that somewhere along the way. forgotten it in the rush of falling in love, in the excitement of wedding planning, in the hope that I could be enough for David and his family if I just tried hard enough. But trying to be enough for people who have already decided you're not is like pouring water into a cup with no bottom. You can pour forever and it will never be full. The rain finally stopped around dawn, leaving the city washed clean and gleaming. I got up before David woke, made coffee and opened my laptop. There was an email waiting that I had been ignoring for 3 weeks. Subject line: Opportunity in Portland, Director of Pediatric Rehabilitation. I had applied months ago, back when it felt like a fantasy, a what if, a door I would never actually walk through. Now I read every word. The salary was nearly double what I made. The position was prestigious, the kind that could define a career. And it was 3,000 miles away from Charlotte, from the Mitchell family, from group chats that could exile you with the push of a button. I hit reply and started typing. Thank you for your patience. I am very interested in discussing this position further. When would be a good time to talk? I sent it before I could second-guess myself. David walked into the kitchen 10 minutes later, still in his pajamas, hair sticking up. He kissed the top of my head like it was any other morning. Sleep okay? Like a baby, I lied. And poured him a cup of coffee, watching him smile at me with complete trust, with no idea that I had just opened a door he didn't know existed. Outside, the sun was breaking through the clouds, and somewhere in the distance, I could hear the city waking up to a new day. The week that followed moved like a held breath, everything suspended in that strange space between before and after. Charlotte settled into early October, the kind of southern autumn where the heat finally breaks but the air still clings to your skin. Mornings smelled like coffee and car exhaust. Evenings carried the scent of someone's backyard grill mixing with the faint sweetness of late-blooming gardenias. I drove to work each day past the same strip malls and chain restaurants, past the same construction sites that never seemed to finish, past Freedom Park where joggers circled the lake like they were running from something they couldn't name. The city felt familiar and foreign at the same time, like a language I used to speak fluently but was slowly forgetting. David tried. I had to give him that. He tried in the way that people try when they want the problem to disappear without actually solving it. He brought home flowers on Wednesday, my favorite yellow roses, the ones that reminded me of my grandmother's garden in San Antonio. He suggested we take a weekend trip to Asheville, get away from everything for a few days, reset. He even mentioned casually over dinner on Thursday that his mother had been under a lot of stress lately, that she wasn't herself, that maybe we should all just give it some time. I nodded and ate my pasta and said nothing about how stress doesn't make you cruel, it just reveals the cruelty that was already there. He mistook my silence for forgiveness. I let him. The truth was I was waiting for the callback from Portland that came on Friday afternoon, while I was helping a 5-year-old named Daniela relearn how to grip a pencil after surgery on her hand. My phone buzzed in my pocket and I ignored it until her session ended, until her mother bundled her up in a purple jacket and promised we'd see each other next week, until I was alone in the therapy room with just the parallel bars and the exercise mats and the autumn light slanting through the windows. The voicemail was from Dr. Richard Chun, the director of the Portland program. His voice was warm, professional, eager. We'd love to fly you out for an interview. We think you'd be an excellent fit for what we're building here. We're looking at the last week of October if that works for your schedule. I stood there in the empty room, surrounded by equipment designed to help broken bodies heal, and felt something shift inside my chest. This wasn't a fantasy anymore. This was real. This was a door that had opened wide enough for me to walk through if I had the courage. At home that evening, David was in a good mood. He'd closed some big deal at work, something involving blockchain and cryptocurrency that he'd tried to explain to me a dozen times but still sounded like science fiction. He ordered Thai food from our favorite place, the one on North Davidson that always got my spice level exactly right. We ate on the couch watching some cooking competition show where people made elaborate desserts under time pressure. It should have felt normal. It should have felt like us. But I kept thinking about Portland, about rain instead of humidity, about mountains instead of flat Carolina Piedmont, about a life where I wasn't waiting for the next group chat message to tell me I didn't belong. During a commercial break, David muted the TV and turned to me with that look he got when he was about to say something he'd been rehearsing. I talked to my mom today. Really talked to her. She feels terrible about the misunderstanding. She wants to make things right. I set down my pad thai. What does making things right look like? He shifted, uncomfortable. She wants to have you over for dinner. Just the four of us. You, me, her, and Dad. A chance to clear the air. The laugh that came out of me was sharp enough to cut. Are you serious right now? She kicks me out of the family in front of everyone. And her idea of making it right is another dinner where she gets to control the narrative? It wasn't a kick out, it was just miscommunication. David. She said stay away forever. Those were her exact words. He looked away, jaw tight. She didn't mean it like that. Then how did she mean it? Because from where I'm sitting, those words only have one meaning. He stood up, pacing to the window, hands in his pockets. Why are you making this harder than it needs to be? She's trying. Can't you meet her halfway? I stood too, my heart pounding. Halfway from where, David? She's the one who attacked me. She's the one who violated my privacy. She's the one who turned your entire family against me. And now I'm supposed to show up at her house and pretend everything's fine so everyone can feel comfortable again? That's not meeting halfway. That's me crawling back and thanking her for the privilege. The apartment felt too small suddenly, the exposed brick walls closing in. David turned to face me, and his expression was something I'd never seen before. A mixture of desperation and resentment, like he was drowning and angry at me for not throwing him a rope. What do you want from me, Jess? You want me to cut off my family? You want me to choose between you and them? Is that what this is about? No, I said quietly. I want you to understand that there shouldn't be a choice. When someone disrespects your wife, you don't mediate. You defend. But you've never done that. Not once. Not when your mother made comments about my job being less important than yours. Not when she rewrote our wedding timeline without asking me. Not when she posted that message in the group chat. You always find a way to make it my responsibility to be the bigger person while she gets to be as small as she wants. He stared at me like I'd spoken in a foreign language. That's not fair. Maybe not. But it's true. We didn't speak for the rest of the night. He went to bed early or pretended to. While I sat on the balcony overlooking the Noda neighborhood, watching the neon signs flicker on in the bars below, listening to the Friday night crowds spilling onto the sidewalks with their laughter and music and freedom. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. You coming to Sunday dinner? Mom's making tamales. The thought of my mother's kitchen, of the warmth and chaos and unconditional acceptance, made my throat tight. I'll be there, I typed back. The next morning David left before I woke up. He'd texted that he was playing golf with his father, that he'd be back by dinner, that we could talk then. I knew what that meant. Robert would give him the same advice he always gave, that keeping the peace was more important than being right, that women were emotional and needed time to calm down, that Patricia meant well even when she didn't act well. I'd heard it all before, secondhand through David's explanations and justifications. I spent Saturday morning cleaning the apartment, scrubbing counters that were already clean, organizing drawers that didn't need organizing, doing anything to keep my hands busy and my mind from spinning. Around noon my phone rang with an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Jessica Martinez? This is Caroline Webb from the Portland program. Dr. Chan asked me to coordinate your interview trip. I have you scheduled for October 28th through 30th. Does that still work? My heart started racing. Yes, that works perfectly. Wonderful. I'm emailing you the itinerary now. We'll cover your flight, hotel, and meals. We're really excited to meet you in person. After she hung up, I sat on the couch staring at my phone, at the email that popped up with flight confirmations and hotel reservations. October 28th was 3 weeks away. 3 weeks to decide if I was really going to do this. 3 weeks to figure out if my marriage was worth saving or if I was just clinging to the idea of what it was supposed to be. Sunday dinner at my mother's house in the Plaza Midwood neighborhood was exactly what I needed. The small bungalow smelled like cilantro and cumin, like home in a way that the loft apartment never had. My mother, Rosa Martinez, was a tiny woman with steel in her spine and kindness in her eyes. She'd raised Marcus and me alone after my father died, working double shifts as a nurse while somehow never missing a school play or soccer game. She took one look at my face and pulled me into the kitchen, away from where Marcus was watching football in the living room. What happened, Mija? I tried to summarize it, the group chat, Patricia's message, David's response, but it all came tumbling out in a mess of English and Spanish, the way it always did when I was upset. My mother listened while she rolled masa for tamales, her hands moving with the muscle memory of 1,000 meals made with love. When I finished, she wiped her hands on her apron and cupped my face. "You know what your father would say?" I nodded, already feeling tears prick my eyes. He'd say you can't build a house on sand. We ate tamales and rice and beans around the small kitchen table, Marcus telling stories about the job site where his crew was building a new apartment complex in South End. My mother asking gentle questions about work and carefully not asking about David. After dinner, while my mother packed leftovers for me to take home, Marcus pulled me aside on the back porch. "You know you don't have to stay with him, right? Just because you got married doesn't mean you signed your life away." "I know. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, you're doing that thing you always do. That thing where you try to fix everything and everyone except yourself." I leaned against the porch railing, looking at the small backyard where my father had built a swing set when we were kids, long since rusted and overgrown. "I got a job offer. In Portland." Marcus let out a low whistle. "That's across the country." "I know. You gonna take it?" "I don't know." "Yeah, you do. You're just scared to admit it." The drive back to the loft felt longer than usual, even though it was only 15 minutes. The leftovers sat on the passenger seat, still warm, smelling like comfort and unconditional love. David was home when I got there, sitting at the kitchen island with his laptop, probably catching up on work emails. He looked up when I walked in. "How was dinner?" "Good. Your mom doing okay?" "She's great. Made enough food to feed an army as usual." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "We need to talk about my mom's dinner invitation." I put the leftovers in the fridge, taking my time, buying myself a few seconds. When I turned around, I kept the island between us. "I'm not going." "Jess, please." She's really trying to make an effort here. "No, she's trying to reassert control. There's a difference." He closed his laptop with more force than necessary. "So what, we're just never going to see my family again? You're going to hold this grudge forever?" "It's not a grudge, David. It's a boundary. And the fact that you can't tell the difference is a problem." We argued in circles for an hour, the same points repeated with increasing frustration, neither of us willing to budge. Finally exhausted, I went to bed alone. David stayed up, and through the bedroom door I could hear him on the phone, his voice low and placating. I didn't need to hear the words to know he was talking to his mother, reassuring her, probably apologizing for me, smoothing everything over the way he always did. I lay in the dark thinking about Portland, about the interview in 3 weeks, about the possibility of a life where I didn't have to constantly defend my right to be treated with basic respect. My phone lit up with a text from Helen Park. Checking in. "How are you holding up?" I stared at that message for a long time before typing back. "I think I'm holding on to something that's already gone." Her response came quickly. "Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let go." Outside, the city hummed with its usual Saturday night energy, car horns and distant sirens and the bass thump from someone's party. Inside our apartment, the silence between David and me grew louder than any noise the city could make. Monday morning arrived with unseasonable cold. One of those October days where Charlotte couldn't decide if it was still summer or finally fall. I dressed for work in layers, knowing the hospital would be overheated regardless of the weather outside. David had already left, or maybe he'd never come to bed. I couldn't tell anymore. The coffee he'd made was still warm in the pot, a small gesture that felt like an apology or maybe just habit. At work, I threw myself into my patients with an intensity that bordered on desperate. There was Tyler, age 9, recovering from a skateboard accident that shattered his ankle. There was Amara, age 6, born with cerebral palsy, working on her gait pattern with a determination that put most adults to shame. There was Jonathan, age 12, relearning how to use his dominant hand after a nerve injury. Each of them carried their pain with a grace that humbled me. Each of them showed up every week ready to work harder than should be asked of any child. And each of them reminded me that resilience isn't about avoiding damage. It's about choosing to heal anyway. During lunch, I sat in my car in the hospital parking garage and called the Portland program back. Dr. Chan answered on the second ring, his voice energetic despite the time zone difference, making it barely 9 a.m. on the West Coast. "Jessica, so glad you called. We're all really looking forward to your visit. I wanted to ask about the position timeline. If I were offered the job, when would you need me to start?" There was a pause, the sound of papers shuffling. Ideally January 1st, but we could be flexible for the right candidate. Why do you ask? Just trying to understand the logistics. I appreciate your flexibility. We hung up and I sat there in my car, watching hospital staff come and go, people starting shifts and ending them, all of us just trying to make it through another day. January 1st was less than 3 months away. 3 months to end a marriage or save it. 3 months to decide who I wanted to be. 3 months to figure out if love was enough when respect was missing. That evening, David came home with flowers again. Different ones this time, a mixed bouquet from the grocery store, the kind you grab when you're trying but not trying too hard. He also brought pizza from that place we went to on our third date, the one with the thin crust and the honey drizzle. Peace offerings. Olive branches. Ways of saying sorry without actually saying the words. We ate in front of the TV again, some procedural drama neither of us really watched. During a commercial he turned to me. I've been thinking about what you said. About defending you more. You're right. I should have stood up to my mom sooner. I waited because I could hear the but coming before he said it. But I think you could also try to understand where she's coming from. She's protective. She's seen people take advantage of our family before. She just wants to make sure I'm taken care of. And there it was. The both sides, the false equivalency, the inability to see that protection and control weren't the same thing. I set down my pizza slice. David, has it occurred to you that your mother's fear of people taking advantage might actually be about her own insecurity? That maybe she's the one who needs therapy, not me? He flinched like I'd slapped him. That's not fair. Why not? Because she's a difficult person doesn't mean she's broken. I didn't say she was broken. I said she needs help learning how to have healthy relationships. And honestly, so do you. We can't keep having the same fight, Jess. I agree. So what changes? He reached for my hand. We go to the dinner. We hear her out. We try to move forward. And if moving forward means I have to accept disrespect for the sake of peace, then what? Then we figure it out together. Like we promised we would. I pulled my hand away gently. We promised a lot of things, David. We promised to honor each other. We promised to put each other first. We promised that our marriage would be the priority. So far, the only promise you've kept is the one you made to your mother a long time before you met me. The one where you promised to always make her happy, no matter what it cost you. Or me. He stood up abruptly, the pizza box sliding off his lap onto the couch. I don't know what you want from me anymore. I want you to want to defend me. Not because I'm making you, but because the idea of someone treating me like that makes you angry enough to do something about it. But you're not angry, David. You're uncomfortable. And that's not the same thing. He left the room, and I heard the bedroom door close with a quiet click that felt more final than a slam would have. I cleaned up the pizza, threw away the flowers he'd brought because they were already wilting, and sat on the balcony watching the neighborhood settle into evening. Somewhere nearby, someone was playing guitar, the notes drifting up through the October air. It was a sad song, something in a minor key, something that sounded like letting go. My phone buzzed. The Mitchell family updates group chat. Active for the first time since the exile message. Patricia had posted a photo of a perfectly set dining table, white tablecloth, fall centerpiece with gourds and miniature pumpkins, candles already lit even though it was barely 7 p.m. The caption read, "Family dinner this Thursday. Looking forward to quality time with the people who matter most." 43 people saw that message. 37 of them liked it. Not one of them asked if David and I were invited. I turned off my phone and closed my eyes, feeling the autumn breeze cool against my skin, and thought about my father again. He had this saying when I was growing up, whenever I came home upset about some friend who'd betrayed me or some teacher who'd been unfair. He'd say, "Mija, you can't control what people do. You can only control what you do about it. And the people who love you will make it easy to love them back. The people who don't will make you work so hard for their approval that you'll forget you never needed it in the first place." I opened my eyes and looked out at Charlotte, at the city lights starting to glow as darkness fell, at the life David and I had built here that suddenly felt like it belonged to someone else. In 3 weeks, I would fly to Portland. I would interview for a job that could change everything. And somewhere between now and then, I would figure out if I was interviewing for a new position or a new life. The guitar music stopped, leaving just the ambient noise of the city, cars and voices and the distant sound of a train. Inside the apartment, The silence between David and me grew heavier. But out here, in the autumn air with the possibility of change hanging like the smell of rain that hadn't fallen yet, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. I felt like myself again. And that, I realized, was both terrifying and necessary. Because you can't build a future on a foundation that's already cracked. You can only decide whether to keep patching it or start over with better materials. The choice, like everything else, was mine to make. And for the first time, I was ready to make it. The first time I met David Mitchell was at a continuing education conference in Raleigh. One of those mandatory professional development weekends where physical therapists from across the state gathered to learn about new techniques and network over bad conference center coffee. It was February 2.5 years ago, and I'd driven up from Charlotte on a Friday afternoon through one of those winter rainstorms that make you question every life choice that led you to being on I-85 in poor visibility. I'd arrived at the hotel soaked and irritated, my suitcase broken from being dragged across too many parking lots. My hair a disaster despite the umbrella that had turned inside out the moment I stepped out of my car. David was in the elevator when I got in, heading to the same floor apparently, and he took one look at my struggling with my lopsided suitcase and just picked it up without asking. "6th floor," he said, like it was a question and a statement at the same time. I nodded, too tired to protest the help, and we rode up in silence broken only by the mechanical hum of the elevator and the dripping of water from my jacket onto the carpet. When we got to my floor, he carried my suitcase down the hall until I stopped at my room, then set it down gently and smiled. "Rough drive?" The storm came out of nowhere. "Welcome to North Carolina, where the weather has commitment issues." It was such a dad joke that I actually laughed, a real one, and something about that moment of levity after such a frustrating day made me look at him properly for the first time. He had kind eyes, the sort that crinkled at the corners when he smiled, and there was something steady about the way he stood, like he was the kind of person who didn't get flustered easily. We ran into each other again the next morning at the continental breakfast, both of us reaching for the last blueberry muffin at the same time. He pulled his hand back immediately. "All yours. I have terrible muffin karma today anyway." "What's muffin karma?" "Yesterday I dropped one butter side down on a white shirt 10 minutes before my presentation. The universe is clearly telling me to stick with bagels." We ended up sitting together talking about nothing important, work and the conference, and how the hotel coffee was somehow worse than the conference center coffee, which seemed like it should be scientifically impossible. He told me he worked in software development, that he was at the conference because his company was developing an app for physical therapy clinics and he wanted to understand the field better. I told him about working with kids, about how rewarding and heartbreaking it could be in the same hour. He listened like people rarely do anymore, without checking his phone, without waiting for his turn to talk, just actually present in the conversation. By Sunday, when the conference ended, we'd exchanged numbers. He texted me before I even made it back to Charlotte. "Thanks for making a boring weekend conference actually enjoyable. Let me know if you ever want to grab coffee in Charlotte. Not as terrible as hotel coffee, I promise." We had our first date the following weekend at a place in Plaza Midwood, one of those independent coffee shops with mismatched furniture and local art on the walls. We talked for 4 hours, until the staff started pointedly stacking chairs around us. He told me about growing up in Charlotte, about being the oldest son in a family with expectations, about how he'd always been good at math and computers because they made sense in a way people sometimes didn't. I told him about San Antonio, about losing my father young, about moving to Charlotte for grad school and staying because sometimes home is where you build it, not where you started. What struck me most about David in those early months was his gentleness. He didn't rush anything. Our second date was a walk around Freedom Park, feeding ducks stale bread I brought in a paper bag, talking about our favorite books and worst first jobs and whether pineapple belonged on pizza. Our third date was that pizza place with the honey drizzle, where we debated toppings and he didn't judge me for getting ranch dressing on the side. By our fifth date, when he kissed me goodnight outside my apartment building, it felt like the most natural thing in the world, like we'd been building to that moment through every conversation and shared laugh and comfortable silence. He met Marcus first, 3 months in, at a backyard barbecue my brother was throwing for no particular reason other than it was a nice Saturday in May. I'd been nervous about it, knowing Marcus could be protective to the point of interrogation, but David won him over by actually knowing how to handle a grill, and by not pretending to know more about construction than he did. He asked questions, listened to Marcus's stories about the job site, and didn't try too hard. After David left, Marcus pulled me aside while we were cleaning up. He's good people, Jess. Doesn't have that thing a lot of guys have where they're performing all the time. Yeah, I said, watching David's taillights disappear down the street. I think he might be special. My mother was harder to impress, but only because her standards were higher. David came to Sunday dinner 6 months into our relationship, bringing flowers for her and a bottle of wine he'd clearly researched because it paired with the Mexican food she'd cooked. He complimented everything genuinely, helped clear the table without being asked, and when my mother showed him photos of my father, he looked at each one carefully and said, "You can tell he was someone who loved fully." That was the moment my mother decided David was acceptable, though she'd never say it that directly. Meeting his family came later, 8 months in, and it was different from the start. We drove to the Mitchell house on a Sunday afternoon in October, the first cool day after a brutal summer, and I remember feeling underdressed even though I'd changed outfits 3 times. David had assured me it was casual, just family dinner, nothing formal, but the moment we pulled up to the brick colonial with its manicured lawn and iron gate, I knew casual meant something different in his world than it did in mine. Patricia answered the door in pearls and a cashmere sweater set, her smile bright and appraising at the same time. "You must be Jessica. David has told us so much about you. Come in, come in." The house smelled like expensive candles and furniture polish, everything perfectly placed, nothing out of order. There were fresh flowers in crystal vases, throw pillows that looked like they'd never been sat against, family photos in matching silver frames arranged on the mantel in descending height order. Robert Mitchell shook my hand with a firm grip but tired eyes, the kind that suggested he'd fought battles long ago and lost more than he'd won. Emily, David's sister, was friendly but cautious, like she was waiting to see which version of herself she should present based on how her mother reacted to me. Dinner was served in the formal dining room even though there were only 5 of us, each course appearing at perfectly timed intervals. Patricia asked questions that felt like a job interview disguised as getting-to-know-you conversation. Where did you go to school? What do your parents do? What are your career goals? Do you see yourself staying in Charlotte long-term? David squeezed my hand under the table during particularly pointed questions, a silent apology or maybe just acknowledgement that this was harder than he'd warned me it would be. I answered honestly about my state school education, about my mother being a nurse and my father being gone, about wanting to make a difference in kids' lives even if it wasn't the most lucrative path. Patricia smiled through all of it, but I could see her doing math in her head, calculating whether I was good enough for her son based on criteria I'd never be able to meet. After dinner, while the men watched football in the den, Patricia invited me to see her garden even though it was nearly dark outside. We walked through carefully maintained beds of seasonal plants, everything labeled and organized, and she made small talk about hydrangeas and soil pH before getting to her real point. David is very special to our family. He's always been the responsible one, the one we can count on. I'm sure he is. We've worked hard to give our children opportunities, to make sure they understood the value of building something that lasts. I nodded, understanding that this was a warning dressed up as family history. Patricia stopped by a fountain, the water trickling over stones in the growing darkness. I just want to make sure that anyone who becomes part of our family understands what that means. It means loyalty. It means putting family first. It means understanding that some things are worth protecting. I met her eyes directly. I agree completely. Family should protect each other, which is why respect has to go both ways. Her smile faltered for just a second before recovering. Of course. I can see why David likes you. You're very direct. The drive home that night, David was quiet until we were halfway back to my apartment. Sorry about my mom. She can be a lot. She's protective, I said carefully. That's one word for it. He glanced at me, then back at the road. She liked you though. I could tell. Could you? Because I felt like I was being evaluated for a position I didn't apply for. He laughed, but it was uncomfortable. That's just how she is. She wants to make sure I'm making good choices. Do you feel like you need her approval for your choices? The question hung in the car for a long moment. No, he finally said. But it's easier when she's happy. That sentence should have told me everything I needed to know. But I was too deep in falling in love to hear the warning in it. We went back to my place and he stayed over, and in the morning over coffee he told me he was falling for me. I told him I was falling too. And we both ignored the small voice that said falling was the right word because neither of us saw the ground rushing up to meet us. The next year was good. Better than good. David was attentive without being clingy, supportive without being overbearing, present in a way that felt rare. He showed up to my work events even though they were boring, sat through my friends' terrible improv shows, drove me to San Antonio when my mother had surgery, and stayed in a hotel so my family wouldn't feel like they had to host him. He remembered small things like how I took my coffee and that I hated cilantro and that I got anxious before big presentations. He left notes in my apartment when he stayed over, little things on post-it stuck to the bathroom mirror. "You're going to do great today," or "Thanks for letting me take up space in your life." He made me feel like I mattered in a way I hadn't felt since my father died. Like someone was really seeing me, not just the version of me I presented to the world. We talked about future things carefully at first, then more openly. What we wanted from life, whether we wanted kids someday, where we saw ourselves in 5 years. Our visions aligned enough to feel possible, different enough to stay interesting. He proposed on a Sunday morning in February, exactly 2 years after we'd met, at that same coffee shop where we'd had our first date. No big production, no photographer hiding in the bushes, just him and me and a ring he'd saved for months to buy. He got down on one knee while I was mid-sip of my latte and said, "I don't want to do life without you anymore. Will you marry me?" I said yes before he finished the question, and we sat there crying and laughing while the other customers applauded and someone offered to take our photo. It was perfect. It was everything I'd hoped for. It was the moment I believed we could make it work despite his family, despite the differences in our backgrounds, despite the small warning signs I'd been ignoring. Planning the wedding was when cracks started to show, hairline fractures I told myself weren't structural. Patricia had opinions about everything. The venue wasn't prestigious enough, then the prestigious venue she suggested was too expensive, then when we found a compromise she had thoughts about the layout. The guest list ballooned from our proposed 100 to nearly 200 because there were Mitchell family friends who simply had to be invited, business associates of Robert's who would be offended if excluded, distant cousins who would talk if they weren't included. My mother, who was paying for her portion with money she'd saved for years, kept asking quietly if all of this was necessary. I told her it was fine, that it was just how David's family did things, that it would all be worth it in the end. Patricia wanted to be involved in choosing my dress, in selecting the flowers, in approving the menu. She had a way of framing her interference as help, as wanting to make sure we had the perfect day, but it never felt like help. Felt like control. David, caught in the middle, tried to run interference but usually ended up just asking me to compromise one more time. "Can we just use her florist? It would make her so happy. Can we add those extra tables? It's only 20 more people. Can you maybe choose a different bridesmaid dress color? She really thinks the mauve would photograph better." Compromise felt small in isolation, but together they added up to a wedding that looked beautiful in photos but didn't feel like ours. The morning of the wedding, while my mother helped me into my dress in the bridal suite at the Duke Mansion, she asked me one question. "Mija, are you sure? About David, yes. About everything else, I'm choosing to believe it will get better." She kissed my forehead. Sometimes better doesn't come. Sometimes you have to build it yourself. The wedding was lovely by all accounts. The weather cooperated, the flowers were stunning. The food was excellent. The band kept everyone dancing. Patricia glowed in her mother of the groom dress, holding court and accepting compliments on how beautiful everything was, as if she'd planned it all herself, which in a way she had. David cried when I walked down the aisle, and his vows were beautiful, promising to be my partner and my safe place and my biggest supporter. I believed him. I wanted to believe him. During the reception, while we were cutting the cake, I caught Marcus watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Later when we danced he said quietly, "It's not too late, you know." "To what?" "To change your mind." "I'm not changing my mind. I love him." "I know you do. I just hope he loves you the same way. Loud enough that everyone can hear it. Not just in the quiet moments." I had thought about that conversation a lot in the months since. About what it meant to love someone loud enough that everyone could hear it. About whether David had ever really done that, or if he just loved me in the spaces where it didn't cost him anything. Our honeymoon in Costa Rica was bliss. 2 weeks of beaches and rainforests and no cell service, no family obligations, just us. We hiked to waterfalls, ate fresh ceviche, watched sunsets from our bungalow porch, made love like we were the only 2 people in the world. I thought maybe Marcus had been wrong, maybe this was proof that we could make it work, that the wedding stress had been an aberration and now real life could begin. But real life, it turned out, included family dinners every other Sunday, included Patricia's phone calls to David about things I should be doing differently, included slow, steady erosion of the boundary between our marriage and his mother's expectations. And real life included me realizing much too late that the man I'd fallen in love with in a hotel hallway carrying my broken suitcase was not the same man who sat silent while his mother dismissed me in a group chat. Or maybe he was the same man, and I'd just been too busy falling to see that his kindness had limits, and those limits were drawn by someone else. Either way, sitting in our apartment remembering those early days, I felt the weight of all those small compromises, all those quiet accommodations, all those times I'd made myself smaller so everyone else could be comfortable. And I wondered when exactly I'd stopped recognizing myself, and whether the person I used to be was still in there somewhere, waiting to be remembered. October 13th arrived on a Tuesday with the kind of weather that makes you believe summer might never actually end in the South. The temperature hit 87 degrees by noon, humidity thick enough to swim through. The kind of day where your clothes stick to your skin the moment you step outside. I'd taken the afternoon off work for what David had called an important appointment, though he'd been vague about the details. Meet me at 2 o'clock at that cafe on Park Road, the one with the good iced coffee. We need to talk about some family stuff. The vagueness should have been my first warning, but I was still operating under the assumption that we were partners, that family stuff meant our family, the one we were supposedly building together. I got to the cafe early, ordered an iced vanilla latte, and sat at a corner table watching the lunch crowd thin out. Young professionals on laptop calls, mothers with strollers grabbing a moment of peace, college students studying with headphones on, all of them living their separate lives that occasionally intersected in this neutral space. My phone sat on the table, silent for once, the Mitchell family updates chat mercifully quiet for the past few days. I'd started to hope that maybe the storm had passed, that Patricia's public exile had been a momentary lapse, that we could all move forward with some new understanding of boundaries. Hope, I was learning, was sometimes just denial in a prettier package. David arrived 10 minutes late, looking uncomfortable in his business casual, tie loosened jacket over his arm. He ordered coffee and sat down across from me with the body language of someone about to deliver news they'd rehearsed. Before he could start, I said, "You look like you're about to tell me someone died." He tried to smile, but it came out wrong. Nobody died. This is about Thanksgiving. My stomach tightened. Okay, what about Thanksgiving? My mom wants to host this year. Big family gathering, all the cousins, the whole extended Mitchell clan. She's really excited about it. That sounds nice. She wants to make sure we're on the same page about some things before the holidays. Meaning what, exactly? He shifted in his seat, not quite meeting my eyes. She's concerned about some comments you made. About the family. About feeling judged. She thinks maybe we should have a conversation about expectations before we all get together. I set down my coffee carefully, fighting to keep my voice level. David, I made those comments in therapy. In a private, confidential setting. How does your mother know what I said in therapy? He finally looked at me directly. Emily mentioned she was worried about you. That you seemed stressed. Mom asked if there was anything she should know about, anything that might be affecting our marriage. So Emily violated my privacy, told your mother about my therapy, and now your mother wants to have a conversation about expectations? You're saying that like it's reasonable. It's not an attack, Jess. She just wants to clear the air. By interrogating me about things I said in confidence? By making me defend my feelings to her? He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. Why does everything have to be a battle with you? Maybe if you just talked to her, explain what you meant, it wouldn't be this big thing. I stared at him, this man I'd married, this man who was supposed to be on my side. Do you hear yourself right now? Your mother has no right to know what I discuss in therapy. Emily had no right to tell her. And you have no right to sit here and act like I'm being unreasonable for being upset about it. Before he could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and something in his expression changed. What? Nothing. Just a message from Mom. David. What does it say? He hesitated, then turned the phone so I could see. The message was in the Mitchell Family Updates group chat, posted 3 minutes ago while we were sitting here. Patricia had written, "Sometimes you have to protect your family from people who pretend to be something they're not. Real character shows in hard times. We know who we can trust." My hand started shaking. She's posting about me again. Right now. While you're here with me. You told her we were meeting, didn't you? David put his phone away. I mentioned we were having coffee. So she could time this perfectly. She could make sure I saw it while you're here to see my reaction. That's paranoid. Is it? Because it feels pretty calculated to me. The cafe suddenly felt too small, too hot. The air conditioning not quite enough for the heat outside. I stood up grabbing my bag. Where are you going? Home. We're not done talking. Yes, we are. Because this isn't a conversation, David. This is you managing me for your mother's benefit. And I'm done being managed. I walked out into the brutal afternoon heat, the sun so bright it hurt. My car was parked down the street, and I made it halfway there before David caught up. Jess, please. Just stop for a second. I stopped but didn't turn around. My mother is difficult. I know that. But she's not malicious. She just needs time to adjust to you being part of the family. It's been 1.5 years, David. How much more time does she need? And when does her adjustment stop requiring me to compromise who I am? He moved to stand in front of me, blocking my path. Can you please just come to one family dinner? Show her that you're willing to try? I already tried. I tried at every Sunday dinner. I tried at the engagement party. I tried during all the wedding planning. I tried when she rewrote our vows without asking. I tried when she seated my family in the back at the reception. I tried when she posted in the group chat that I wasn't welcome. How many times do I have to try before it counts? His face flushed. Those are all old things. We're talking about moving forward. No, you're talking about me accepting the same disrespect with a smile so you don't have to deal with your mother being upset. There's a difference. We stood there on Park Road, traffic passing by, people walking past pretending not to notice a couple arguing in public. David opened his mouth, closed it, then said quietly, I don't know how to make both of you happy. I never asked you to make me happy. I asked you to respect me, to defend me when someone disrespects me. But you can't do that, can you? Because that would make your mother unhappy, and her happiness matters more than my dignity. That's not true. Then prove it. Go into that group chat right now and tell your mother that what she posted was inappropriate. Tell her that I'm your wife and she needs to treat me with respect. Tell her that our marriage comes first. He looked at his phone, then at me, then back at his phone. The silence was answer enough. I walked to my car, got in, and drove away without looking back. In my rearview mirror, I could see him standing on the sidewalk, phone in hand, frozen between two loyalties and unable to choose. Or maybe he'd already chosen, and I was just finally seeing it clearly. The drive home took forever in lunch hour traffic, giving me too much time to think, to replay the conversation, to feel my phone buzzing repeatedly in my purse with texts I didn't want to read. When I finally got back to the apartment, I sat in the parking garage for 10 minutes just breathing, trying to calm the rage and hurt and disappointment that were all tangled together in my chest. My phone showed 7 missed texts from David. I opened them against my better judgment. I'm sorry. I handled that badly. Can we talk tonight? Please don't be mad. I'm trying to balance everything here. Mom just texted me upset. She says she's trying to reach out and you keep pushing her away. Can you at least respond so I know you're okay? I'm coming home early. We need to work this out. Each message made it worse. Not one of them acknowledged what his mother had done. Not one of them defended me. Every single one was about managing my reaction, smoothing things over, making everyone comfortable except me. I went upstairs, changed out of my work clothes into leggings and an old t-shirt, and did what I always did when I needed to think. I went for a run. Freedom Park was crowded for a Tuesday afternoon. Dog walkers and parents with kids, teenagers on skateboards, the usual mix of people escaping into public solitude. I ran the loop around the lake once, twice, 3 times, pushing until my lungs burned and my legs ached and the anger started to transform into something clearer. Clarity. That's what the burning brought. Clarity that this wasn't going to get better. Clarity that David would always choose the path of least resistance. Clarity that Patricia would never see me as family, only as a threat to her control. Clarity that I could spend the rest of my life trying to earn acceptance from people who had decided before they met me that I wasn't enough. And clarity that I had a choice. I always had a choice. I just hadn't been brave enough to make it. When I got back to the apartment sweaty and exhausted, David was already there. He'd changed out of his work clothes too, was sitting on the couch with his laptop closed, that same waiting posture from the other night. Before he could speak, I held up a hand. I need to shower. Then we'll talk. I took my time, letting the hot water wash away the sweat in the afternoon and the lingering hope that things might magically fix themselves. When I came out, David had ordered Chinese food, my usual order. Another peace offering that felt less like love and more like transaction. We ate in silence for a few minutes before he started. I talked to my mom, told her the group chat posts needed to stop, that she was making things harder. My chopsticks paused halfway to my mouth. And what did she say? She said she was just trying to protect me, that she's seen people marry into families for the wrong reasons, that her own sister went through something similar and she's just being cautious. I set down the chopsticks. David, your mother hired a private investigator to look into my background. She knows more about my family's financial history than I do. That's not caution. That's control. His face went pale. What are you talking about? The file, David. The one on your desk 2 months ago. The one with my father's bankruptcy case, my mother's mortgage, my brother's credit report. The one with the investigator's logo and your mother's handwritten notes. I saw it. He put down his food, looking genuinely shocked. I didn't know about that. I swear I didn't know. You didn't know that someone investigated your wife? That someone went through my family's private information and compiled it into a report? That report just appeared on your desk by magic? He stood up, pacing to the window. She told me she did a standard background check. I thought she meant like what employers do. A credit check or whatever. I didn't know she went that deep. And you didn't think to tell me? To ask me? To maybe consider that any level of investigation was a massive violation? I thought it was over after we got engaged. I thought she'd accepted it. I laughed bitter. She's never going to accept it, David. Don't you see that? You could bring her a perfect princess from the perfect family with the perfect pedigree, and she'd still find something wrong, because this isn't about me. It's about her need to control you. And as long as you let her, we don't have a marriage. We have a hostage situation where I'm always one wrong move away from being kicked out. He turned to face me, and there were tears in his eyes. I love you. I know you do. But love without action is just words. And I need more than words, David. I need you to stand up and say, this is my wife. This is my family now. My mother doesn't get to investigate her. She doesn't get to post about her in group chats. She doesn't get to set conditions on whether she's welcome. And if you can't do that, if you can't put us first, then we need to seriously reconsider what we're doing here. The words hung in the air between us, heavy with implications neither of us wanted to fully examine. David sat back down, head in his hands. What do you want me to do? I want you to want to do it. That's the thing you keep missing. I shouldn't have to tell you to defend me. The fact that someone disrespected me should make you angry enough to act. But it doesn't. It makes you uncomfortable, and you deal with that discomfort by asking me to compromise. We sat there in the remains of our Chinese food dinner, the food getting cold, the apartment growing dark as the sun set. Finally, David said, what if we did couples therapy? What if we got help learning how to communicate better? I thought about that for a long moment. Therapy helps people who want to change. Does your mother want to change? That's not fair. She's not the one in our marriage. No, but she's in our marriage anyway. She's in our bed, in our decisions, in our conflicts. And until you're ready to move her out, therapy for us is just putting a band-aid on a broken bone. I stood up, started clearing the food. David stayed seated, looking lost. I don't know how to fix this. Maybe you can't. Maybe this is just what it is and we have to decide if we can live with it. Can you? Live with it? I turned to look at him. 6 months ago I would have said yes. I would have convinced myself that love was enough, that your good qualities outweighed the hard parts. But now? Now I'm not sure I can spend my life apologizing for existing, for having opinions, for expecting basic respect. Now I'm not sure I can watch you choose someone else's comfort over my dignity one more time. His phone buzzed on the coffee table. We both looked at it. Another message in the Mitchell family updates chat. He picked it up, read it, and his face went even paler. What? My mother just sent a message to the whole family. She's inviting everyone to Thanksgiving. Everyone except us. Says our presence would create unnecessary tension during the holidays. I walked over and looked at his screen. There it was, in black and white. Patricia had posted a beautifully filtered photo of her dining room, table already decorated with fall centerpieces and candles, with a caption that read, "So excited to host Thanksgiving this year. It's important to gather with people who share our values and respect our family traditions. Some difficult decisions had to be made about the guest list, but sometimes protecting peace is more important than keeping everyone comfortable. Looking forward to quality time with those who truly belong." Below it, 43 people had already started commenting. "Can't wait. So excited. You always host the best gatherings." Not one person asked why we weren't invited. Not one person questioned the passive-aggressive caption. Not one person stood up and said, "Wait, this isn't right." David's hand was shaking as he held the phone. "I can't believe she did this. She did it in the group chat, where everyone can see, where everyone knows we're being excluded." I took the phone from him gently and read the message again. "You know what the worst part is? It's not that she excluded us. It's that she did it like this, publicly, to humiliate you as much as me. She's showing you what happens when you don't fall in line. And everyone in your family is going along with it. That's the part you need to see, David. They're all choosing this. They're all okay with it." He stood up abruptly, grabbed his keys. "Where are you going?" "To talk to her. To tell her this is unacceptable." "David, don't." "Why not? This is too far. Even for her, this is too far. Because you're going to go over there angry, and she's going to cry and tell you how hurt she is, how she's tried so hard with me, how she just wants what's best for you. And you're going to come back here feeling guilty and confused, and somehow I'll end up being the one apologizing for causing family drama." He stopped at the door. "You don't know that." "I do know that. Because it's happened a dozen times already. Your mother knows exactly how to play you, how to make herself the victim, how to make you feel like you have to choose. And you always choose wrong." He looked at me, really looked at me, and something in his face crumbled. "I don't want to lose you." "Then fight for me." "Not at her. For me. Go to that group chat right now and write that we're hosting Thanksgiving at our place and everyone's welcome. Set a boundary. Show her and everyone else that our marriage isn't negotiable." He looked at his phone, at the group chat still open on the screen. His thumb hovered over the keyboard. I watched him wrestle with it, watched years of conditioning and fear and family loyalty battle against what he knew was right. And I watched him lower the phone. "I can't. Just like that. Not with anger or justification. Just flat honesty. I can't." Something broke in me then. Not with sound or drama. Just a quiet fracture that I knew would never fully heal. "Hey," I said softly. "Then I can't either." "What does that mean?" "It means I'm going to Portland. For the interview. And if they offer me the job, I'm going to take it. And you have to decide if you're coming with me or staying here." "You're giving me an ultimatum?" "No. I'm giving you a choice. Between building a life with me or staying in the one your mother built for you. Those are two different things, David. They always have been. I just pretended they weren't." He stood there holding his keys, coat half on, looking like a man caught between two burning buildings. "I'll go with you. To Portland. We'll make it work. Will you? Because making it work means leaving all of this behind. It means Christmas in Portland instead of Charlotte. It means missing Sunday dinners. It means telling your mother that you're choosing your wife and your future over her expectations. Can you actually do that?" He didn't answer. The silence stretched until it became an answer itself. That night, he slept on the couch. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the city sounds outside, and feeling something shift inside me. Not grief yet. That would come later. This was something different. This was the moment when you finally stop fighting the current and let the river take you where it's been trying to go all along. Tomorrow I would confirm my interview dates. I would start making plans. I would stop waiting for David to become someone he'd never been taught to be. But tonight, I just lay there in the dark, feeling my marriage in one silent breath at a time, and understanding that sometimes love isn't enough when respect is missing, and that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit that you deserve better than what someone is capable of giving. My phone lit up with one last notification before I turned it off. The Mitchell family updates chat. Someone had posted a laughing emoji on Patricia's Thanksgiving announcement. I didn't look to see who. It didn't matter anymore. I was already gone. Morning came with the sound of rain. Not the violent thunderstorm kind, but the steady, relentless type that settles in for the day and changes all your plans. I woke up alone in bed. Could hear David moving around in the kitchen. The familiar sounds of coffee brewing and cabinets opening and closing. For a moment, I let myself pretend it was a normal Wednesday, that we were just another couple getting ready for work, that last night's conversation had been a bad dream I could shake off with enough caffeine. But the weight in my chest reminded me otherwise. Some things once said out loud can't be unsaid. Some doors once opened can't be closed again. I got dressed in the bathroom, avoiding the mirror until I had to face it. The woman looking back at me had tired eyes but a set jaw, the expression of someone who'd made a decision and was still gathering the courage to follow through. I could hear my father's voice, clear as if he were standing beside me. Courage isn't the absence of fear, Mija. It's doing the right thing even when your hands are shaking. My hands were shaking as I applied mascara, as I pulled my hair into a ponytail, as I picked up my phone to check the time. 7:45. I had a full day of patients scheduled. Kids who needed me to show up with energy and focus, who deserved better than a therapist distracted by her crumbling marriage. David was sitting at the kitchen island when I came out, 2 mugs of coffee poured, mine prepared exactly how I liked it with oat milk and 1 sugar. He looked like he hadn't slept, dark circles under his eyes, hair uncombed, still wearing the same clothes from yesterday. "We need to talk about last night," he said as I reached for the coffee. I took a long sip, letting the warmth spread through me before responding. "What's there to talk about? You made your position clear." "That's not fair." I was put on the spot. "It's been 18 months, David. At what point does it stop being on the spot and start being who you actually are?" He flinched but didn't argue. "I called my mom this morning. Told her the Thanksgiving thing was unacceptable. Told her she needed to include us or I wasn't coming either." Something in my chest loosened slightly. "What did she say?" He looked down at his coffee. "She cried. Said I was choosing you over my whole family. Said she'd tried so hard to welcome you but you kept pushing her away. Said she didn't understand why I was being so cruel to her when she was just trying to protect me." "And what did you say?" He was quiet for a long moment. "I told her I needed some time to think. That we all needed to cool off before the holidays. That maybe we should do Thanksgiving separately this year." It wasn't the answer I wanted, but it was more than he'd done before. "To start," I said carefully. "She posted in the group chat after we hung up." "Posted what?" "That she's heartbroken that I'm abandoning the family. That she raised me better than this. That she hopes I'll come to my senses before I destroy relationships that can't be repaired." He showed me his phone. The post was there, along with 73 comments from various Mitchell family members. Most of them were supportive of Patricia, offering sympathy and advice, telling David to remember where he came from, suggesting that marriage was important but family was forever. A few were neutral, uncomfortable emojis or vague statements about hoping everyone could work it out. Not one single person called Patricia out for manipulation. Not one person suggested that maybe, just maybe, she was the problem. I handed the phone back. "You see it now, right?" "See what?" "How deep this goes. It's not just your mom, David. It's the whole system. They've all been trained to support her narrative, to prioritize her feelings, to make you feel guilty for having boundaries. And until you're ready to step completely outside that system, nothing changes. We just keep having the same fight in different rooms." He rubbed his face with both hands. "I don't know how to step outside it. It's my whole family. I know. And I'm not asking you to cut them off. I'm asking you to put us first. To build something separate that they can't infiltrate every time they disagree with our choices. But I don't think you know how to do that. I don't think anyone ever taught you that it was okay to." The rain picked up outside, drumming harder against the windows. We sat there in the gray morning light, 2 people who loved each other, but couldn't seem to translate that love into the kind of partnership that survived outside pressure. Finally, I said what I'd been thinking since I woke up. "I'm going to stay at Marcus's for a few days. Give us both some space to think clearly." David's head snapped up. "You're leaving?" "I'm creating distance so we can both figure out what we actually want without being in each other's space every minute. There's a difference." "How long?" "I don't know. Through the weekend at least. Maybe longer." His eyes filled with tears. "This feels like the beginning of the end. Maybe it is. Or maybe it's the beginning of something more honest." Either way, we can't keep doing this dance where we pretend everything's fine and nothing changes. I stood up, rinsed my coffee mug in the sink, grabbed my work bag from the hook by the door. When I turned back, David was watching me with an expression that broke my heart. "I do love you," he said quietly. "You know that, right? I know you love me the best way you know how. I just don't know if that's enough anymore. And I think you need to figure out if you're okay with that, or if you're willing to learn a different way." I left before he could respond, before I could second-guess myself, before the part of me that wanted to fix everything and make it okay could override the part that knew some things needed to break completely before they could be rebuilt properly. Work was simultaneously a blessing and a torture. The kids needed me present, needed me focused, and something about their uncomplicated needs, their straightforward pain and equally straightforward healing, helped me compartmentalize. There was Miguel, age 8, working on regaining strength after a bicycle accident that had fractured his femur. There was Lily, age 6, learning to walk with a prosthetic leg after a congenital condition required amputation. There was Jordan, age 10, recovering from a spinal surgery that had given him back mobility doctors thought he'd never have. Each of them faced their challenges with a courage that humbled me, that reminded me what real problems looked like, that put my marriage troubles in perspective without minimizing them. Between patients, I called Marcus. "I need a place to stay for a few days. Maybe a week." His response was immediate. "Doors open. You okay? Getting there. Bring wine. I'll provide ice cream. It's a deal." During my lunch break, I sat in my car in the hospital parking garage and called Dr. Chan in Portland. The receptionist put me through immediately, and his voice came on the line with that Pacific Northwest calm that already felt like a different world. "Jessica, good to hear from you. Are we still on for the 28th? Actually, I wanted to ask if there was any flexibility on that date. Any chance I could come out sooner?" There was a pause, the sound of papers shuffling. "Let me check the schedule. Can I ask if everything's all right? Just some personal circumstances that have accelerated my timeline. I'm definitely still interested, just wondering if we could expedite the process." More shuffling, keyboard clicking. "How about next week? Tuesday and Wednesday? We could do a compressed interview schedule, show you around, get you in front of the team. That would be perfect. Consider it done. I'll have Caroline send you the updated itinerary. And Jessica, for what it's worth, sometimes the best decisions are the ones we make when circumstances force our hand. We'd love to have you out here." "Thank you, Dr. Chun. I really appreciate the flexibility." After we hung up, I sat there watching hospital staff come and go, people starting shifts and ending them, ambulances arriving with their urgent cargo, all the daily drama of a place where life and death decisions happened every minute. My marriage problem suddenly felt both enormous and tiny, the most important thing in my world and also just one small story among millions. I texted David. "Interview got moved up to next Tuesday and Wednesday. I'll be flying out Monday morning." His response came 5 minutes later. "That's really soon. Do you want me to come with you?" "No. I need to do this alone." "Okay. Will you be at Marcus's tonight?" "Yes. I'll pack a bag and drop it off at home while you're at work." "Thank you." There was a long pause, those 3 dots appearing and disappearing several times before his next message came through. "I'm going to talk to a therapist about all of this, about me and my family and why I can't seem to do what I know is right." "That's good, David. That's really good. I hope it helps." "Me too." The rest of the day passed in a blur of exercises and encouragement, of small hands gripping parallel bars and determined faces concentrating on tasks that should be simple but weren't. By the time my last patient left at 5:30, I was exhausted in that bone-deep way that comes from holding yourself together through sheer force of will. I drove to the apartment while David was still at work, let myself in with my key, and stood in the doorway looking at the space we'd shared for 6 months. It already felt like someone else's life, like a set from a play I'd been performing in without realizing I was acting. I packed quickly and efficiently, taking only what I'd need for a week or two. Clothes, toiletries, laptop, chargers, my favorite pillow. I left behind anything that felt permanent, anything that suggested I was making a final decision rather than just creating space. On my way out, I paused by the kitchen island where we'd had so many meals, so many conversations, so many moments of trying to connect across a gulf neither of us quite knew how to bridge. I pulled out a notepad and wrote a simple message. Taking time doesn't mean giving up. It means trying to see clearly. I'll call you this weekend. Marcus lived in a renovated warehouse in South End. One of those industrial spaces converted into lofts that maintain the concrete floors and exposed ductwork, but added modern kitchens and floor-to-ceiling windows. He buzzed me up, helped carry my bags inside, and handed me a glass of wine before I'd even set them down. That bad, huh? I took a long drink. Worse than I thought it would be. Better than it could be. That's cryptic. I'm leaving for Portland on Monday. Job interview. Might not come back. He whistled low. Does David know? He knows. And he's still trying to figure out how to choose me without disappointing his mother. Which is impossible, so mostly he's just paralyzed. We settled onto his couch, a massive sectional that could seat 10 people, and I told him everything. The group chat exile, the Thanksgiving exclusion, the investigator's report I'd found months ago, David's inability to set boundaries, my realization that love without respect was just a prettier word for tolerating mistreatment. Marcus listened without interrupting, the way he'd always done since we were kids, the big brother who'd learned early that sometimes people needed to talk themselves into understanding rather than being told. When I finished, he was quiet for a minute before saying, "You know Dad would be proud of you, right? For what? Not settling. Not making yourself small. Not spending your whole life trying to earn approval from people who've already decided you're not enough." I felt tears prick my eyes for the first time all day. I feel like I'm failing. At marriage. Being a wife. And making it work. You're not failing at anything. You're refusing to accept failure as the baseline. There's a difference. He topped off my wine. You remember when Dad got laid off from the construction company? When I was like 14. You were 12. Yeah. He must have applied to 100 jobs that first month. Every rejection letter that came in, Mom would find him sitting at the kitchen table just staring at it. And you know what he told me once when I asked him why he didn't just take any job, why he kept holding out for something good? What did he say? He said settling for less than your worth teaches everyone around you that you're worth less than you are. He said sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from something that's almost good enough and trust that something actually good enough exists. Marcus paused. Took him 3 months, but he found that supervisor position that paid better and treated him right. And he never regretted waiting. I wiped my eyes. When did you get so wise? Been wise. You've just been too busy trying to make a broken thing work to notice. We ordered Thai food and watched terrible reality TV, the kind where people make fools of themselves for money and you feel better about your own life choices by comparison. Around 10 I checked my phone. David had texted twice. Got your note. Thank you for that. And later. I'm seeing a therapist tomorrow. First available appointment. Going to really work on this. I showed the messages to Marcus. That's something at least, he said. Yeah. I just hope it's not too little too late. Only you can answer that. I know. That's the hard part. I set up Marcus's guest room. A small space with a twin bed and a window overlooking the street. It felt strange to be sleeping alone in an unfamiliar bed. Strange to not hear David breathing beside me. Strange to have silence without tension. But it also felt necessary, like lancing a wound so it could drain properly before healing. I lay there listening to the city sounds, different from our neighborhood, more industrial, more honest somehow. My phone buzzed with one more message. This one from Helen Park. Heard you're moving your interview up. Proud of you for taking action. Remember, choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. Sweet dreams. I smiled in the dark and typed back. Thanks for always knowing what to say. Her response was immediate. That's what friends are for. Go to Portland. See what else is possible. Then decide. No wrong answers, just honest ones. The next few days passed in a strange limbo. I went to work, came back to Marcus's place, avoided most of David's calls but responded to his texts. He was respecting the space I'd asked for. Checking in but not pushing, sending updates about his therapy appointment. Therapist asked me a lot about my childhood. About learning to manage my mom's moods. I never really thought about it as managing before. And later, she used the word enmeshed. Said my family system doesn't have healthy boundaries. That I was trained to prioritize keeping peace over being honest. Working on understanding what that means for us. I read each message carefully, looking for signs of real change versus just saying what he thought I wanted to hear. It was hard to tell the difference. Friday evening, Marcus was working late on a project deadline, so I had the loft to myself. I opened my laptop and started researching Portland. Neighborhoods, cost of living, hiking trails, coffee shops, everything that would make it feel like a real possibility instead of just an abstract escape. The more I looked, the more it felt right. Not because it was perfect, but because it was mine. A choice I was making for myself, not in reaction to someone else's expectations. My phone rang around 8. David. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. Hey, I said carefully. Hey, is this a bad time? No, it's fine. What's up? I just wanted to hear your voice. Miss you. I felt my chest tighten. I miss you too. That's not the same as wanting to come home though, is it? No, it's not. He was quiet for a moment. I've been thinking a lot this week. About everything you said. About how I've been handling things. Or not handling things. I'm listening. My therapist asked me something that's been stuck in my head. She asked me what I was more afraid of. Losing you or disappointing my mother. And I realized I don't know. Which means the answer is probably my mother. Because if it was you, I'd know immediately. That admission, the honesty of it, caught me off guard. That must have been hard to realize. It was. It is. Because it means I've been lying to myself about who I am. About what kind of husband I'm capable of being. You're capable of change, David. We all are. But you have to want it badly enough to do the uncomfortable work. Not just recognize the problem, but actually change the behavior. I know. I'm trying to figure out how. We talked for almost an hour, the longest real conversation we'd had in weeks. He told me about his childhood, about learning that his mother's happiness was directly tied to his compliance, about how his father had modeled conflict avoidance as the path of least resistance, about how his sister had learned to manipulate the same system from the inside. He talked about feeling guilty for even having this conversation, for speaking critically about his family, about how the therapist had pointed out that guilt response is part of the problem. It felt like talking to a different version of David, one who was finally willing to look at uncomfortable truths instead of managing them away. But I also knew that insight wasn't the same as transformation. Knowing you have a problem and changing your behavior were two very different things, and the real test would come when his mother pushed back, as she inevitably would. Before we hung up, he asked, what happens after Portland? I don't know. If they offer you the job, are you taking it? Think so. Even if I ask you not to? Especially if you ask me not to. Because that would mean you're still prioritizing control over my autonomy. He was quiet. I understand. I hope you do. I really hope you do. Saturday, I spent the day preparing for Portland. I researched the therapy center, studied their programs and philosophy, prepared answers to likely interview questions, picked out outfits that looked professional but approachable. Marcus helped me do a mock interview over breakfast, throwing out tough questions about why I was leaving Charlotte, how I handled conflict with colleagues, what my 5-year career goals looked like. For that last one, I realized I had no idea. My 5-year plan had always included David, had always assumed we'd be building something together here. Now I had to imagine a future that might not include him at all, and it was both terrifying and oddly freeing. What if I actually liked Portland? What if I thrived there? What if leaving my marriage was the best thing that ever happened to me? The thoughts felt disloyal even as I knew they were necessary. Sunday, I went to my mother's house for dinner. She'd called earlier in the week, her voice carefully neutral, asking if I wanted to come by. She didn't mention David. She didn't ask questions. She just said, I'm making enchiladas. You should eat. When I got there, the small house smelled like home, like cumin and chili powder and comfort. My mother hugged me at the door, held on longer than usual, then led me to the kitchen without a word. We cooked together in comfortable silence, her rolling tortillas while I chopped vegetables, the rhythm of it soothing in a way nothing else had been all week. Over dinner, she finally spoke. Your father and I almost divorced once. Did you know that? I set down my fork. What? When? You were 3. Marcus was 7. He was working himself to death trying to prove he could provide for us, trying to show everyone who doubted him that he was worthy. And I was exhausted, raising 2 kids mostly alone, feeling invisible. We stopped seeing each other. We were living in the same house but completely disconnected. What happened? We had to decide if we were going to fight for each other or just exist next to each other. I told him I didn't want to exist. I wanted to live. And he had to choose if he was going to live with me or just survive next to me. How did you know he would choose right? She smiled sadly. I didn't. But I knew I couldn't choose for him. I could only choose for myself. And I chose that I was worth fighting for whether he fought or not. That gave him permission to choose too. And he chose me. But he could have chosen wrong. Yes. And then we would have ended. But at least it would have been honest. At least I wouldn't have spent my life shrinking to fit into his version of marriage. She reached across the table and took my hand. You are worth fighting for, Mija. Whether David can see that or not doesn't change that truth. You've always been worth it. I spent the night there, in my childhood bedroom that my mother had kept mostly unchanged, sleeping in the twin bed where I dreamed about my future when I thought I knew what it would look like. In the morning, Marcus picked me up to drive me to the airport. The drive was quiet, just the radio playing low and the sound of Monday morning traffic. At departures, he pulled over and turned to face me. You know you don't have to come back, right? Like even if the interview goes badly, even if they don't offer you the job, you don't owe anyone an explanation for choosing yourself. I know. Do you though? Because you've spent your whole life being the good daughter, the good student, the good wife. Sometimes good just means convenient for everyone else. What if you tried being inconvenient for a while? See how it fits. I hugged him hard. When did my little brother get so smart? Big brother. And I've always been smart. You've just been too busy accommodating everyone else to notice. He helped me get my suitcase from the trunk, hugged me one more time and said, whatever happens, we're proud of you. Call me when you land. I will. And Marcus, thank you for always letting me figure things out on my own instead of telling me what to do. That's because you're stubborn as hell and wouldn't listen anyway. Might as well let you think you figured it out yourself. I really laughed for the first time in days. The airport was crowded with Monday morning business travelers. Everyone moving with purpose. Everyone heading somewhere. I checked my bag, got through security, found my gate with an hour to spare. Sat there watching planes take off through the big windows, each one carrying people towards something, away from something, into the unknown middle space where transformation happened whether you were ready or not. My phone buzzed. David, good luck today. I know you're going to be amazing. And Jess? Whatever you decide, I want you to know I'm sorry. For not being brave enough sooner. For making you feel like you had to earn your place in my life. For choosing comfort over courage. You deserved better. You deserve better. I'm just hoping I can figure out how to be better. I stared at that message for a long time. It was everything I'd wanted him to say. But words I'd learned were easy. Action was what mattered. And I wouldn't know if he meant it until I came back. If I came back. The boarding call came over the intercom. I picked up my bag, showed my ticket, walked down the jetway toward the plane that would carry me 3,000 miles away from my marriage, my family, my whole life as I'd known it. Found my seat by the window, buckled in, watched Charlotte drop away beneath me as we climbed into the clouds. Somewhere below was David, maybe watching the sky, maybe already at work trying to distract himself, maybe sitting with his therapist talking about enmeshment and boundaries and learning to choose differently. Somewhere below was my mother, probably at work at the hospital, carrying the strength she'd always had that I was only now learning to claim as my inheritance. Somewhere below was Marcus, back at his construction site, building things that would last because they were built on solid foundations. And somewhere ahead, in a city I'd never lived in, was a possibility I couldn't quite name yet. Not a new life necessarily, but maybe a truer one. The plane leveled out above the clouds, and the flight attendant came by with drinks. I ordered a ginger ale, pulled out the folder with my interview materials, and started reviewing. But my mind kept drifting to that embroidered napkin from the story I'd heard once, the one that said respect. That's what all of this came down to, really. Not love or loyalty or family. Just respect. The basic human dignity of being seen and valued for who you actually were, not who someone needed you to be. And maybe, just maybe, flying 3,000 miles away was what it took to remember that I'd always deserved it, had always been worthy of it, had just been looking in the wrong places for someone to give it to me when I should have been giving it to myself all along. The plane pushed west through clear blue sky, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt something that might have been hope or might have been peace or might have been the thing that happens when you finally stop fighting the current and let the river carry you toward whatever comes next. Either way, I was ready. Or at least I was willing to try to be. Portland welcomed me with rain. The soft, persistent kind that felt less like weather and more like atmosphere. The city spread out beneath gray skies that somehow made everything look cleaner, sharper, more defined. Mountains rose in the distance, their peaks hidden in clouds, a reminder that something bigger always existed beyond what you could see. Dr. Chun met me in the lobby of the therapy center Tuesday morning. His handshake firm, his smile genuine. "Welcome to Portland, Jessica. Ready to see what we're building here?" The facility was everything the photos had promised and more. Wide windows overlooking the Willamette River, equipment that sparkled with newness, therapy rooms designed with children in mind, murals on the walls painted by local artists, a rooftop garden where kids could practice mobility skills in natural settings. But what struck me most was the staff. They gathered in the conference room for my presentation, 15 therapists who asked thoughtful questions and laughed at my nervous jokes, and made me feel less like a candidate and more like a colleague. This is what it could feel like, I thought. Work without politics. Respect without having to earn it. The interview lasted 2 days, meetings with department heads and hospital administrators, tours of partner facilities, dinners with potential teammates. Everyone asked why I wanted to leave Charlotte, and I'd practiced an answer that was honest without being bitter. I'm looking for an opportunity to grow professionally in an environment that values innovation and independence. It was true enough. Wednesday evening, Dr. Chun took me to a coffee shop in the Pearl District, one of those Pacific Northwest places with locally roasted beans and baristas who took their craft seriously. We sat by the window watching people hurry past in the rain, and he said, "I'm not supposed to tell you this before the official offer comes through, but the team loved you. If you want this position, it's yours." Something in my chest expanded. "Thank you. That means more than you know." He stirred his coffee thoughtfully. "Can I ask you something off the record?" "Of course. What are you running from?" I blinked, caught off guard. "What makes you think I'm running from something?" Because people don't usually relocate across the country for a job, unless they're running toward something amazing or away from something difficult. And while this position is great, you don't strike me as someone who runs toward. You strike me as someone who runs away, finally, after staying too long. I looked out at the rain, at the people living their Northwest lives, and decided honesty had brought me this far. I'm running from a marriage where I had to make myself smaller to fit, from a family that never wanted me, from a version of myself that forgot she was allowed to take up space. He nodded slowly. "And you think Portland will fix that?" "I think Portland will give me room to remember who I was before I started apologizing for existing. Whether that fixes anything or just reveals what was already broken, I guess I'll find out." "Fair enough. The offer will be in your inbox by Friday. Take the weekend to think about it. We'd need you by January 1st, but we understand that's a big ask." "I appreciate the time, though I think we both know I've already decided." He smiled. "Yeah, I think we do too." I flew back to Charlotte Thursday afternoon, the plane cutting through clouds that felt symbolic of something I couldn't quite name. Marcus picked me up from the airport, took one look at my face and said, "You're taking it." "I'm taking it." "David know yet?" "Not yet. Gonna tell him tonight." "You need backup?" "I can come with." "No. This is something I have to do alone." He dropped me at the apartment, where I'd texted David I'd meet him at 6. I got there first, let myself in with my key, stood in the space that had been ours and felt like a stranger visiting someone else's life. David arrived 10 minutes later carrying takeout from the Thai place, another peace offering, another attempt at normal. We ate in careful silence until he finally set down his fork. "So how was it?" "It was good. Really good. They're offering you the position." "Yes. Are you taking it?" I met his eyes. "Yes, I am." He nodded slowly, like he'd been preparing for this answer. "When do you leave?" "They want me by January 1st. That's 6 weeks. "I know." We sat with that reality, the countdown clock that had just started ticking on whatever this was between us. Finally, David said, "I've been doing a lot of work with my therapist, really digging into why I am the way I am." "That's good." "I went to Sunday dinner at my parents' house. Told my mother that her behavior toward you was unacceptable. That I should have stood up for you from the beginning. That I was ashamed of how I'd let her treat you." "How did she react?" "She cried. Told me I was breaking her heart. That she'd only ever wanted what was best for me. All the usual things." "And what did you say?" I told her that what was best for me was a wife who respected herself enough to leave when I failed to protect her. That you leaving was the most honest thing that had happened to our marriage. That if I lost you, it would be because I'd chosen comfort over courage, and I'd have to live with that. Something shifted in my chest, not quite hope but close to it. That must have been hard. The hardest thing I've ever done. She didn't take it well. The family group chat has been brutal. Half of them think I'm being manipulated by you. The other half is staying silent, which is somehow worse. He pulled out his phone, showed me. I've been removed from Mitchell family updates. My own mother kicked me out of the family chat. I stared at the screen. David, I'm so sorry. Don't be. It's the first honest thing that's happened. She showed me exactly what conditional love looks like. And I finally saw it clearly. We talked for hours about his therapy and my interview, about what change actually looked like versus what it felt like, about whether a marriage could survive this much damage or if we were just prolonging the inevitable. Around midnight, I said what we'd both been thinking. I don't know if I can trust this. Trust what? That you've actually changed. That the next time your mother pushes, you won't fold. That I won't spend my life waiting for you to choose wrong. He took my hand. I don't know if I can promise I won't mess up again. I'm learning to set boundaries, but it's hard. It goes against everything I was taught. But I can promise I'll keep working on it. That I'll keep choosing therapy over comfort. That I'll keep choosing us over them. Even when it's terrifying. Is that enough? I don't know yet. But I appreciate the honesty. He squeezed my hand. Come to Portland. Take the job. Build the life you deserve. And if there's room in that life for a husband who's finally learning how to be worthy of you, I'll come out there. I'll leave Charlotte, leave my job, leave everything. But I need to prove it to you first. Not with words. With actions. I felt tears finally come. All the grief and relief and possibility mixing together. What if you can't? What if it's too late? Then at least I'll know I tried. That I finally fought for you the way you always deserved. That I chose right even if it wasn't soon enough. We held each other in that apartment one last time. Both of us crying. Both of us knowing this was either an ending or a beginning but not yet sure which. In the morning, David helped me pack more of my things. We moved in careful silence, sorting through what I'd take now and what could wait. By noon, Marcus's truck was loaded. David stood on the sidewalk as I got in the passenger seat, his hands in his pockets, looking lost. I'll call you, I said through the open window. I know. I love you, Jessica Martinez. I love you too, David Mitchell. I just hope that's enough. The truck pulled away and I watched him shrink in the side mirror until he disappeared. 3 weeks later, I signed the offer letter. January 1st, I loaded a moving truck and drove across the country toward mountains and rain and a future I couldn't quite see yet. 6 months after that, David showed up at my door in Portland with 2 suitcases and a letter from his therapist. 12 months after that, we renewed our vows in a small ceremony with just my family. No Mitchells invited, no group chat to document it. Just 2 people who'd learned the hard way that love without respect was just a prettier word for settling. And that sometimes you had to lose everything to figure out what was actually worth keeping. On our kitchen table in Portland sat an embroidered dish towel Marcus had sent as a housewarming gift. It said simply, respect earned, respect given, respect kept. That, we'd learned, was what family actually meant. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.